go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this meeting this afternoon just to go over a little bit about VPK provider accountability and kindergarten readiness. This session from 12 to 12:45 is going to be in English, and then from 1 to 1:45 there will be another session on a separate link in Spanish if you have registered to that session also. I will ask that if you have any questions, you can go ahead and input them in the Q&A section of the Teams meeting, that feature that says Q&A, and we'll go ahead and have a time for questions at the end so we can respond all your questions. So let's get started. So there is a new VPK accountability system. I'm sure you have heard a little bit about the VPK accountability systems at some of our previous meetings, but this is the official year where this accountability system will be official. There for 22-23 and 23-24, designations were released for each provider by the Division of Early Learning, but this is the first year that it will be official. And the scores are set to come out now August 14th by the Division of Early Learning. So to understand a little bit about the VPK accountability system and how the designation is going to be assigned to each VPK center, it's going to be as follows. 50% of the component of the designation that you received is based off quality, or that VPK class composite score that you received. And all of this data is based on last school year. So now in August, you will receive the designation for how you performed, or the VPK program performed last school year. 50% will be weighted on the class composite score with a maximum of 50 points, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that in the next slide. And then 30% is going to be looking at those learning gains that occurred in using FAST during the progress monitorings, and it's basically going to be looking at PM1 and PM3. So that first progress monitoring the children took and the last progress monitoring children took. And then 20% is going to be based on just solely PM3. What percentage of children scored that kindergarten readiness achievement score, which they're looking at as 707. We will be sending a copy of these slides to you if you registered through Elevate Ed. We do have your emails on file, and later today after the meeting, we'll send you a copy of these slides. So the performance designation, once you take those three components, you'll get a certain number of points for each component. When the state adds all those points together, you'll get your total number of points. And depending on your total number of points, you'll receive a designation. So your designation, as you can see, if you have 61 points or higher, you're considered excellent. 46 to 60 points, above expectations. 28 to 45 points, meet expectations. And then the orange and the red would be where you would fall below the meeting expectations. And if that were to happen to your program, you would be placed on what is called an improvement plan, and you would be considered a provider on probation. So if that is your case, when the designations are released, we will be in contact with you, the EOC, because there will be an improvement plan that will need to occur. In order for the state to calculate and provide your program with a designation, you need to have had at least 4 VPK children that completed more than 50% of the hours. So if you're a very small program that only had 4 children and maybe lost one of those children enrolled mid-program year, or went through a change of ownership last school year, you may not have a designation. You may have a designation of just incomplete because there wasn't sufficient data to provide the school with a designation. So let's dive a little deeper. Let's look at that class component that's weighted 50% of your designation. Again, this is based on the VPK composite class score that you received for last school year. So depending on your class score would depend on the number of points that you receive. So for example, anything below a 4, unfortunately you get 0 points, because below a 4 you're not even able to contract for VPK because 4 is that minimum. But between a 4 and 4.49, you get 5 points, 4.5 to 4.99, 10 points, and so forth. The maximum number of points that you can receive is 50 points, and that would entail receiving a class composite score of 6.5 or higher to receive those 50 points. But you can kind of tell already, depending on what your class composite score last year, how many points you are going to be awarded for this component. Now, on the last slide, I said that you needed at least 28 points to be safe, to be at meeting expectations. Okay? So if you received a 5.5 or higher, you already got 30 points. So you can already predict just based on class scores that you won't be placed on probation because you would have received 30 points. Again, if you have any questions, please make sure to put them in the chat or the Q&A section and we'll be addressing them. For component two, if we dig a little bit deeper, this is looking at the percent of eligible children that showed sufficient growth from PM1 to PM3. And the program needed to have had at least 4 children complete progress monitoring 1 in your program and progress monitoring 3 in your program. So it's only looking at really at those children that were enrolled with you the entire program. The children that came in mid-program, they won't be considered for this component because they didn't take the first assessment with you. Vice versa, if they transferred the middle of the school year, they don't have assessment 3 data, so those children won't be considered. It's only looking at the group of children that were with you the entire school year and took PM1 and PM3. So for the growth formula, it's a little bit of math, but so you can understand how the state is calculating this. For each student, they're implementing this growth formula that you see in blue right next to where it says growth formula to see if on average between when they input the information between PM1 and PM3 scores, on average, did the child show a growth of 12 points per month on average? If the child did, then that child is showing they're marking them as a child show that they showed a growth rate. If it was a summer program, they're looking on average 40 points per month. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that every month a child necessarily made 12 points in learning gains because the child doesn't even take the assessment every month. It's just when they input PM1 and PM3 into this formula, into this calculation, does the average come out to be about 12 points per month? Okay. If it wasn't 12 points per month, but the child was classified at the highest category on Fast Start Early Literacy, which is probable reader, and the child maintained that classification, then the child is also considered as making learning gains. Once the state calculates the number of eligible children that made growth, they're going to input it into another formula to give you the set number of points that you can receive for this category. Now, the maximum number of points that you can receive for this category is 30 points. So they're going to take the number of eligible children, so those children that were with you for PM1 and PM3 that made sufficient gains, and then divide that by the total number of children that were with you that took PM1 and PM3, and then multiply that by 100 and then times 0.30 to be able to get those learning gain points. For component 3, this is strictly looking at achievement, so the equation is a little simpler because it's only looking at the percentage of children that took the PM3 assessment, what percentage of those children scored a 707 or higher. And 707 right now is that kindergarten readiness mark. The program must have had at least 4 children complete PM3 to qualify for this component. Now, how they're calculating this formula is they're taking the number of eligible children that scored 707 and dividing that by the total number of children that took PM3, multiplying it by 100 and then times 0.20 to be able to get that 20%, how many points you're getting of that 20. So for example, if you had 8 children and if you had 10 children and 8 of those 10 children scored a 707, you would plug it into the formula like we see there. 8 divided by 10, multiply that by 100 and then by 0.20 to be able to get that weighted out of 20, how many points, and you see that you got 16 out of 20 points. This is a calculator that was designed by the Division of Early Learning because as you can see, some of these sections require a lot of formulas and calculations and plugging in. But if you want to track how your program did last year manually, even though this data is going to be released now, this week on the 14th by the Division of Early Learning, or this is something that you want to track this school year, you can use this calculator. So you can go ahead and put for each section, for example, Quality, you would put your composite score, and it gives you the number of points. Achievement, you would put the number of children that got that 707 score on PM3 and how many children actually took PM3, and it gives you your points and so forth. So this is a great little tool to have. And again, we'll be sending this PowerPoint slide, and if you click on the hyperlink, you'll be able to access this calculator to have it on hand. So performance designation results. So whatever total number of points that you receive, you're going to be assigned a designation. Okay? If you have a designation of meets expectations, above expectations, or excellent, the state is considering that you completed successfully the VPK program. If you receive anything of below expectations or unsatisfactory, like I said before, unfortunately, you will have to implement an improvement plan with the Early Learning Coalition to be able to provide VPK. And you will be on that improvement plan until a new designation is released for the following year. And if you receive a designation that removes you off probation, then you would stop doing the improvement plan. Those that implement an improvement plan, the process did change from prior years. And if that is your case, the coalition will be reaching out to you directly to provide technical assistance. But basically, the programs are going to have to implement 20 hours of training for the VPK teacher, lead teacher, assistant, and director. And those 20 hours come from approved list of DEL training, and the school will also have to implement an approved curriculum. Now, the approved curriculum just came out by DEL, and it would need to be a curriculum from that list. I've also included the hyperlink. Now, you only have to implement a curriculum for this list if you're a provider on probation. If you are not a provider on probation, VPK allows the flexibility for you to choose the curriculum that you wish, as long as it's developmentally appropriate and follows the standards. And lastly, some of you may receive a designation of incomplete. Incomplete just means that the state didn't have enough data for all three components to assign you with a designation. If you do receive a designation of incomplete, we'll be reaching out to you because there is a technical assistance plan that will need to be filled out. But one of the reasons you may receive incomplete is because you didn't have at least 4 children complete the program with at least 51% of attendance or more, or you had a change of ownership, or if you didn't test for PM1 or PM3 during your designated window, that might be another reason because that data is not showing for the PM1 window. So there are some special circumstances. There's some of you here that have gone through a change of ownership sometime in the last school year, and now this is the first school year that you'll be implementing the full program. When a change of ownership occurs, like I previously said, you will receive a designation if you completed more than 50% of the program hours. So if you had a change of ownership that occurred and you purchased a school in October, obviously you would have completed more than 50% of the program and you will receive a designation. But if you completed less than 50% of the program hours, your program will be receiving a designation of incomplete. Here are some special circumstances. So, additional special circumstances. So there may be reasons, other reasons why you didn't receive a designation. And I talked about this before, not having the 4 children complete the attendance because of delayed enrollment, or some children may have been marked non-participation status because they were the test wasn't appropriate. So you didn't have data for PM1 and PM3 for all 4 children. But again, if this is your case, we will be contacting you to provide direct technical assistance. This is just a general overview. And if we could put everything in a picture, here's a picture of what VPK accountability looks like. So basically, the child enters kindergarten, and during the track, I'm sorry, VPK, and during the track of VPK, they're going to take progress monitoring 1 at the beginning of the school year, PM2 mid-program year, and PM3 the end of the school year. During that time of VPK, at some point, the teacher, the classroom will receive a class observation to view the teacher-child interactions, and you will receive a composite score. If you have more than one VPK classroom, they will give you a composite score. And then the child graduates VPK. Then there is the summer, and then the child enters kindergarten. And this is the part that I wanted you guys to see. The child takes Star Early Literacy or PM1 again in kindergarten. Star Early Literacy continues to third grade. So for VPK accountability, what has changed is now you're receiving a designation or accountability based on what you actually do during your VPK year, your actual class score and the progress monitoring that the children take while they're with you in VPK. Previously, the children graduated, they went to kindergarten, and how they performed in the assessment in kindergarten, that was the designation that you received, depending on their kindergarten performance. That's no longer the case, which is a positive, something positive that they're actually looking at your school year. But I want you to see this because the state, although they're only giving you a designation for VPK, how the children performed in your program, they are still looking at how children perform then in kindergarten if they go to the public school system and are assessed. So the state is measuring two things. How are children perform when they end the VPK program? How are they performing? And lastly, how are those children that attended the VPK program performing when they enter kindergarten? So this is something just to keep in mind of how the accountability system works at the state level and some of the data that they're going to be looking at. And the reason I bring this up is because it was recently released for last fall, 2024. Only 43% of children that entered kindergarten in Florida were ready for kindergarten. So that's not even half. In Miami-Dade, we're looking at 40%, and Monroe, we're looking at 42%. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's always a topic of conversation in legislation. Uh, is VPK worth it? Because money is being allotted to VPK. Is this something that works and helps prepare children for kindergarten? Now, there is data that shows that children who complete VPK or are in attendance for at least 70-80% of the hours of VPK perform better than children who do not attend the VPK program or do not meet the attendance. But this is just something for us to be aware of because although this, how children perform in kindergarten, providers are no longer being penalized for that. The children that you guys have now in your programs essentially are still the children that are going to kindergarten. And one of our jobs is to help prepare them and the families to be able to be ready for kindergarten. These are some resources that we have listed on this slide for you to be able to access. I'm going to click on one of the resources really quickly so you can see. But basically, the first one, the VPK Accountability webpage, this is where the performance metrics are going to be released. This is public data, so you will be able to see every VPK program in the state of Florida listed here. So really quickly, I'm going to click here. And it will take you to the state VPK program accountability page. A lot of the resources that we've discussed, like the calculator, presentation, a questions and answers form, they're all located here. The statute, all of the resources. Then if you go here to this section where it says 23, 24, and 22, 23, you'll be able to see previous designations that the state released, but they did not count against you. This is the first year will count. The 24-25 designations will be released by August 14th for school year programs, and for summer programs that just implemented summer VPK, it will be released by September 23rd. You will see a document like this one posted here, and you'll be able to open it and view it. And so you can see what it will kind of look like when it is posted. I'm going to click on one from the previous years. So if I click on this one of the previous year, I know this appears really small, but you can zoom in. You will see a very long list of every county in Florida, the district, the EOC, the provider name, and provider ID. And in addition, you will see the breakdown of how you got your designation. So I'm going to take this for school. It tells me the number of children, the number of eligible children, so children that actually completed the program with you and took the testing. what was your quality score, the class score, how many points you received depending on that quality score, the number of eligible children that completed PM3, what percentage of those children met the achievement score, how many points you got for that category, and so forth. And at the end, you'll see the total number of points and the performance designation that you received. And again, this is public record, and you will see this for every school that offered VPK in all of Florida, and your school will be listed here as well when the designations are released. And that is it for the English part of the presentation.